Hi there, my name is Sandeep Gill, and my topic is on teaching First Nation education in classrooms today. First, I will discuss the history of First Nation people in BC. Starting very early in the 1400s, European settlement begins in North America. In 1867, the British North American Act of 1867 creates the Dominion of Canada. In 1871, BC joins Dominion of Canada to control of Indians is assumed by Canada. BC regains authority over land and resources. In 1876, the Indian Act was created. The Act consolidates all previous Indian legislation, defines Indian status, and Superintendent General is given administrative powers over many aspects of Indian life. In 1931, the Native Brotherhood of BC was formed. In 1960, Aboriginal people were given the right to vote in federal elections. This was a big deal for them because it was the symbol of freedom. Also in that year, the closure of residential schools began. In 1982, the new Canadian Constitution guarantees Aboriginal rights and treaty rights. Very recent in 2005, the vision of a First Nations Education Action Plan is the development and implementation of sustainable education systems under the full control and jurisdiction of First Nations based on recognition of inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights and under international law. In 2009, the Aboriginal Education Enhancement Agreement was signed by the BC Ministry of Education, the Vancouver Board of Education, the University of British Columbia, the Musqueam Nation, the Métis Nation, Coast Salish Nation, and the urban Aboriginal people. This was created to support Aboriginal students with the following goals: to create a sense of pride, self-esteem, belonging, place, acceptance, and caring in their schools, to achieve academic success and mastery of skills, and actively participate with success in their education from K to 12, and also to establish community connections that promote increased knowledge regarding diversity among Aboriginal people, the history, traditions, and cultural awareness. In 2010, the Assembly of the First Nation launches a national call to action on education through asking the corporate sector, philanthropic organizations, higher learning institutions, provincial and federal governments, and ordinary Canadians to join the campaign. By supporting education and skills training, we can ensure our First Nation youth will reach their full potential and that our nations resume our place as integral to the success and prosperity of Canada. First Nation people today. 1 in 6 Aboriginal people in Canada live in BC. Most of the First Nation population is in BC, and BC has is the highest ranking province in Canada that has the most First Nation and Aboriginal people, numbering 232,290, which is 17% of the Aboriginal identity population in Canada lived in BC. They make up 5% of the total population according to the 2011 Statistics of Canada. Almost 1/4 of Aboriginal people in BC resided in Vancouver, although they represented only 2% of the total population living there. BC is home to 155,020 First Nation people, 69,470 Métis, and 1,570 Inuits. From 2006 to 2011, the First Nations population increased by 20% in Canada, which is a big jump. In the Fraser Valley region of BC, most of the population is the Stolo Nation, which is also referred to as the River People. The First Nation language in the Fraser Valley. The first people in the Fraser Valley are known as the Stolo, who speak Halkirnamano. I'm really sorry if I pronounce these words wrong. Sometimes the pronunciation is very difficult. They have 3 dialects spoken from around Parksville to Saanich, inland on Vancouver Island, and on the mainland from the mouth of the Fraser eastward to Harrison Lake and the lower end of the Fraser Canyon. The first dialect is Hanakinam, and is spoken by peoples in the lower mainland, in the Fraser Valley to Fort Langley. Second is Halkanaman. It's closely related to Halkalelam. It is spoken by the Stolo First Nations and some of their close neighbors in the Fraser Valley and Fraser Canyon. The Stolo are a group of First Nations inhabiting in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia. They traditionally speak the upriver dialect of Halkalelam of the Salishan languages, Salishan family of languages of the Coast Salish people. Stolo is a Halkalelam word of Fraser River. The Stolo are thus the river people. The first traces of the Stolo originated in Fraser Valley date from 8,000 to 10,000 years. Solgo Texawin is the Halkalelam word that people use to refer to their traditional territory. They live by the river because their main source of food during spring and summer is fish. During winter, it becomes more difficult for them to hunt fish, since the waters are frozen and the animals hibernate. First Nations in the Fraser Valley River Basin made their living through seasonal hunting and gathering. They ate mammals such as deer, moose, mountain goat, black bear, and beaver. Thus also hunted ducks and grouse and gathered berries, root vegetables, and mushrooms. Bark and long roots provided medical benefits. First Nations used many unique fishing tools, such as weirs, basket, traps, dip trout, and salmon. Salmon were prized above all of their fish and were the economic, cultural, and spiritual heart of the Fraser River Basin. Now on to their shelter. The way of living was very cultural. A primary shelter for the Stolo people were in the form of a longhouse. Most Stolo longhouses were built with a single flat, but slanted roofs for winter time. The entire extended family would live in a longhouse, and the structure could be extended as the family grew. Pit houses were also used during the early generations. A success for the Stolo was that during winter times their houses were warm, and the slanted roof prevented the rain and snow to get into the house. They used wood from trees to build their houses, and it was very durable and strong. Therefore, during storms, they were safe. On the other hand, some of the Aboriginal families lived on reserves, which were also so packed and had limited space. Since there was limitations on space, people got sick more easily. The house would be congested with people, and they would be very close to one another, which allowed diseases to travel easily. A success for the Stolo community is that everyone works together as one, and they unite as a community. They hunt together during summertime and also build houses together as a tribe. Even when they hunt, they share the food with each other. They have a strong relationship with each other, which shows how they collaborate together. They also carved boats which were made from cedar trees together as a group. They were able to carve and innovate their own boat designs. All the difficult tasks were completed in groups, since they collaborated together for almost everything that was important in their lives. There are three major First Nation culture areas within BC. Culture areas are defined as geographic regions in which different groups share similar cultures. All three culture areas found in BC are represented in the Fraser River Basin. There is a misconception that First Nations are one homogeneous group who share the same culture, traditions, language, needs, and desires. In BC alone, there is an amazing diversity of First Nation culture and language. There are over 200 First Nation communities in the province, and each with its own unique culture, traditions, and history. Recognition of the unique history, culture, and traditions of each community is a fundamental first step Canadians can take to respect Aboriginal peoples. Limitations and effects of Euro-Western. This is the article review that we read, and my thoughts about some points that I brought out of the article, which I thought were important, are going to be presented to you. Alright, Western thought is linear, positive, and normative. Research that is based in Western thought assumes that there were causal relationships in the world, which can be observed, measured, catalogued, categorized, and predicted. Euro-Western research is wrapped around empirical evidence and the burden of proof. Indigenous thought is holistic, circular, and relational. The World Commission of Aboriginal Peoples in 1996 further illustrates that the distinction between Indigenous and Western research. Today we face the fact that Euro-Western theories remain safeguarded and upheld as superior source of knowledge and analysis in text. First Nation challenges in education. In 2011, 50% of people aged 25 to 64 in BC had a certificate, diploma, or degree, which from a trade school, college, or university. 46% of them were First Nations, 57% of them Métis, and 49% Inuit. In 2011, younger Aboriginal women and men were both more likely to have a college diploma than older ones. Among Aboriginal women aged 35 to 44, 27% had a college diploma in 2011 compared to 21.4% of those aged 55 to 64. In 2011, 60.2% of the First Nation people aged 25 to 64 had completed at least a high school diploma. This picture shows the statistics of the First Nation education and what percent of the people went to school and received a certificate and diploma versus the people that didn't receive a certificate or diploma. The goal is to increase student engagement as well as awareness of Indigenous issues, perspectives, and knowledge through the integration of Indigenous content and ways of knowing into the current curriculum. In order to do this, teachers must be engaged and comfortable with facilitating this learning in the classrooms. The classroom should be all-inclusive, more available resources, communication with the Aboriginal teacher at the school, increased knowledge in teachers, and should be mandatory from kindergarten to 12. I feel like those are important points to increase First Nation opportunities in classrooms, therefore, so the students are able to learn about the culture and the history of the First Nation people that first resided in our province, BC. Teachers should develop awareness among one another and the learning styles of Indigenous students. They should also incorporate meaningful Indigenous cultural perspectives and activities when planning instructions. Also increase knowledge of Indigenous cultures among all school staff, and develop relationships with local Indigenous elders and knowledge keepers. The purpose of this presentation and my initiative for this project is to propose that in Abbotsford, British Columbia, there is a lack of resources in classroom and teachers are not able to carry out the education that children should be learning. Since teachers lack the resources, they also lack the confidence since they have not taught the subject before. It has become mandatory and part of the BC curriculum, but I believe classrooms have not started to implement those strategies and lessons yet. The revised BC curriculum has input Indigenous studies as a mandatory subject. Teachers should be capable of incorporating Indigenous studies into classroom lessons, which will allow the class to become more diverse. My observation at Abbotsford Middle School concludes to that the schools do not provide teachers with enough sources, or the sources they have are outdated. So even though it has become part of the BC curriculum, the government has not started to implement those rules and follow the curriculum that has been revised. How to encourage teachers? There are many ways to encourage teachers into following along and teaching Indigenous culture and history. A few ways is to meet face-to-face with elders and community members to gain perspective and discuss culture and history. Increase teacher confidence with incorporating Indigenous content into lesson plans by co-teaching. Make connections with community and board resources for teachers at elementary school and secondary levels. Also, teachers should be encouraged to talk to the school and ask for new resources on Indigenous people. I have observed in Abbotsford Middle School that either their information is outdated and is from a long time ago, or they just don't have the resources at all. One of the teachers there was teaching French, and she was teaching about cultural festivals. She had every single culture except for Indigenous culture. I asked her why. What's the reason you don't have any Indigenous books or First Nation books or what Inuit books? She's like, the school never provides me with them. So I feel like it's an issue that the school needs to fix and provide the children with those books. Like, it's become a part of the BC curriculum. Why aren't schools implementing this in classrooms now? Why aren't they helping the teachers find proper resources? Resources needed. Like I said, we need more updated books in classrooms. We need to add more engaging activities in classroom lessons so children are eager to learn about different cultures and history and language. So we want to make our children aware of their surroundings, of the people that live around them. We don't want to forget about the First Nations because they have done a lot for us. We need more resources to educate teachers. Teachers have online resources, but they just don't use them. They can make lessons online. They can get a book online. They can order their book and read it to the children and plan a lesson according to those. But I feel like no one wants to implement those and incorporate that information into a classroom lesson. They can even go talk to elders and community members, or even invite a guest speaker to one of their classes and do an activity based on on their speech. There are many ways that we can fix this, but I feel like we need to take the first step. And in order to do that, teachers need to be confident in what they are teaching to their children. Benefits of incorporating First Nation studies. Well, there are many benefits of incorporating it. One of them would be an inclusive classroom. We are trying to include every single diversity into the classroom because all the students come from a different background. Some are Indian, some are Christian, some are Muslim, some are Aboriginal. We need to include all of them so no one feels left out. Diversities in classroom is important. Make the children aware of whose land they are on. First Nations have done a lot for us, and we need to tell them what they have done in the history. Learning about different cultures in British Columbia. And increase knowledge of Indigenous cultures among all school staffs. First Nation organizations in the Fraser Valley. Fraser Valley Aboriginal Children and Family Service Society, also known as FBACFSS, is a fully delegated Aboriginal child welfare agency providing culturally appropriate and holistic services through prevention, community development, and child welfare programs to Aboriginal children, youth, and their families residing throughout the Fraser Valley. They approach every situation with cultural respect and understanding, focusing on reuniting children with their families in a safe, timely manner. This mission is to honor the respect and unique cultures of families and communities as we work together with integrity and dignity to ensure that the safety and well-being of each and every child. The Lower Fraser Valley Aboriginal Society provides support, assistance, and referrals to urban Aboriginal people and their families. Their mission is to help build the community. They can provide knowledge to teachers about Indigenous families and cultures today. Overall, my request is to educate our teachers on Indigenous culture and issues. The goal is to increase student engagement as well as awareness of Indigenous issues, perspectives, and knowledge throughout the integration of Indigenous content and the ways of knowing into the current curriculum. In order to do this, teachers must be engaged and comfortable with facilitating this learning in the classrooms. Also, schools need to bring new or updated books that teach children Indigenous content.